There's a particular kind of silence that exists only in true wilderness. Not the absence of sound, but rather the presence of something older, something that watches from between the trees, and has done so long before humanity carved its first trail through the undergrowth. The Upper Peninsula of Michigan offers such silence in abundance. Miles of unbroken forest, no cellular signals, no neighbors, just the vast indifference of nature, which humans so often mistake for peace. Welcome to Lady's Dark Tales, dear listeners. I'm Mr. Gray. Tonight's account comes from a man who sought refuge in that silence. He went looking for solitude, for healing, for escape from the complications of human connection. How perfectly reasonable. The wilderness has always promised such things to those who seek them. But the wilderness makes no promises it intends to keep. And solitude, as it turns out, is rather difficult to find when something else has already claimed the territory. Settle in comfortably. This promises to be quite fascinating. Here's where our tale properly begins.
I needed to get away. That's the simplest way to put it. 2 years with someone, and then suddenly you're dividing up furniture and pretending you don't notice when she changes her relationship status. The apartment felt like a crime scene. Every room had a memory I didn't want anymore. So I did what I'd always done when life got heavy. I loaded up the truck and drove north. The Upper Peninsula had been my escape valve since college. I knew a spot about 4 hours from Grand Rapids, way back on some old logging roads. No cell reception, no Wi-Fi, just trees and sky and the kind of quiet that lets you hear yourself think. I'd made this trip maybe a dozen times over the years. It had always worked before. The first 2 days were exactly what I needed. I hiked until my legs burned, caught a few smallmouth bass in a creek about a mile from camp, read a paperback by the fire until the light got too low. At night, I listened to the sounds of the forest settling in around me, and for the first time in weeks, I felt something loosen in my chest. I was healing. I really believed that. But the third night changed everything. I woke up around 2 a.m, and at first I didn't know why, and the fire had burned down to embers. The tent fabric glowed faintly orange. Then I heard it. Breathing. Not the snuffling of a raccoon or the huffing of a startled deer. This was deep and slow and deliberate, like something massive working a bellows right outside the thin nylon wall. I could hear the air moving in and out of lungs that sounded far too large, and my first thought was bear. That was the rational explanation, and I grabbed onto it hard. Black bears were common up here. They wandered through campsites all the time. You just had to wait them out. But something was wrong with that explanation, and my body knew it even if my brain wasn't ready to admit it. The breathing had a rhythm to it that felt almost patient, almost curious, like whatever was out there wasn't passing through. It was studying me. I don't know how long I lay there. Could have been 20 minutes, could have been 2 hours. Eventually, the breathing stopped. The silence that followed was somehow worse. I should have stayed in the tent until dawn. That would have been the smart move. Yes, instead I found myself reaching for the zipper, pulling it down inch by inch and pressing one eye to the gap. The moon was nearly full. I could see the clearing around my campsite pretty well. And standing at the tree line, maybe 30 feet away, was a shape that made no sense. It was tall, 7 feet at least, probably more, bipedal, broad across the shoulders in a way that looked almost human, except no human was ever built like that. The proportions were wrong, the arms too long, the stance too still, and the head was a wolf's head. I'm not being poetic, I'm not using a metaphor. In the faint light of the dying fire and the cold glow of the moon, I could see the elongated snout, the pointed ears, the shape of a skull that belonged on an animal, not standing upright on something with hands, and then it turned slightly, and I saw the eyes yellow, reflective, looking directly at me, and I don't remember zipping the tent back up. I don't remember pressing myself against the far side of the floor. I just remember lying there for the rest of the night, listening to my own heartbeat thunder in my ears, waiting for claws to tear through the fabric that suddenly seemed about as protective as tissue paper. Nothing happened. At some point, the sky started turning gray. Birds began their morning sounds. And I was still alive. I broke camp faster than I've ever done anything in my life. Threw everything in the truck without folding or organizing. My hands were shaking so badly, I dropped my keys twice trying to get the door unlocked. The whole time, I kept scanning the tree line, expecting to see that shape watching me from the shadows. The dirt road out was about 3 miles of winding switchbacks through dense forest. I drove too fast, branches scraping against the sides of my truck, suspension groaning over the ruts. I just wanted to reach the main road. I just wanted to be somewhere with other people. I came around a blind curve about halfway out, and that's when I saw it again. It was standing in the middle of the road, daylight this time. Full sun filtering through the canopy. No shadows to hide in, and no darkness to blame for a trick of the eye. I saw it clearly, and I will see it clearly for the rest of my life. The fur was dark brown, almost black in places. The body was muscular and humanoid. The arms hung down past where a man's arms would end, and they terminated in hands with claws. The head sat on those massive shoulders, like something out of a nightmare that didn't know it was supposed to stay in your sleep. It was watching me. Those yellow eyes tracked my truck as I slammed on the brakes and skidded to a stop maybe 40 feet away. For a long second, nothing moved. Not me, not it. Just those yellow eyes locked on mine through the windshield. And then something in me snapped. That's when I made my move. I floored the accelerator. I don't know why I didn't just reverse. Panic, probably. Fight or flight kicked in, and apparently my version of flight meant going forward as fast as possible. I stomped the gas and aimed the truck right at it. What happened next shouldn't have been possible. It jumped, not aside, not out of the way. It jumped straight up and over my truck. While I was doing at least 40 miles an hour, I caught a glimpse of it in my peripheral vision. This massive dark shape sailing overhead like gravity was just a suggestion. Then I heard it land behind me with a heavy thump that I felt through the frame of the vehicle. I swerved, nearly put the truck into a tree. Somehow kept it on the road and kept my foot on the gas. In the rearview mirror, I could see it standing there in the middle of the road watching me drive away. Just standing there, not chasing, not even moving. And that's when it hit me, really hit me. That thing had jumped clean over a moving truck. It could have landed on the hood, could have come through the windshield, could have had me before I even knew what was happening. It didn't. It chose not to. I didn't stop until I reached a gas station about 40 miles south. My hands were still shaking. I told the guy behind the counter what I'd seen. He gave me this look. You know the one, like I was a child who just told him there was a monster under my bed. Probably a bear, he said. Maybe a big wolf. City folks get spooked by wildlife all the time. I stopped talking after that. Tried a few friends back home. Same polite smiles, the same careful subject changes. One suggested therapy. So I stopped telling people. But I couldn't stop looking, and eventually I started searching online, looking for anything that matched what I'd encountered. That's when I found the stories. The Michigan Dogman. Sightings going back over 100 years. People describing exactly what I'd seen in the same shape, the same eyes, the same impossible movement. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't alone. Other people had seen this thing. Somehow, that made it worse. I sold most of my camping gear that fall. Moved to a different apartment, one in a busier part of the city with streetlights on every corner. I don't go into the woods anymore. I don't even like being outside after dark. The guy who used to find peace in the wilderness is gone. Something broke that night, and I don't think it's ever going to heal. But here's the thing. that really gets to me. The thing I think about when I'm lying awake at 3 in the morning and the shadows on my ceiling start to look like something they shouldn't, and it jumped over my truck. It could have landed on the hood, could have come through the windshield, could have caught me when I swerved and nearly wrecked. A creature that fast, that powerful, could have killed me a dozen different ways before I even knew what was happening. But it didn't let me go. I didn't escape that morning. I wasn't clever or fast or lucky. I was released. Whatever that thing was, whatever ancient territory I'd stumbled into, it made a choice. It decided I wasn't worth killing. Or maybe it decided I'd be more useful alive, driving back to civilization with a story no one would believe, spreading fear the way some animals spread seeds. I don't know why it spared me. And I don't know what would have happened if it had made a different choice. All I know is that something is out there in those woods, something that was watching me from the moment I arrived, something that let me leave when it could have made me stay forever. And some nights when sleep finally comes, I still see those yellow eyes in my dreams. Patient, calculating, deciding whether to let me wake up one more time.
And so, dear listeners, that's where our tale concludes. Jake Lawson went looking for peace in the Michigan wilderness. He found something far older than peace and far less forgiving, though I suppose in its own way, it was rather merciful. Quite fascinating, really. The decision to kill requires so little thought. The decision not to requires something else entirely. What made Jake worthy of release? We'll never know. Some questions are not meant to be answered. They're meant to be carried. Tell me, dear listeners, what would you do if you discovered your sanctuary was someone else's hunting ground? Let me know in the comments below. And if tales of strange creatures lurking in lonely places appeal to you, do subscribe to Lady E's Dark Tales. And remember, dear listeners, the wilderness makes no promises. It simply watches and waits, and occasionally lets us leave. Well, thanks for joining me tonight. I hope our paths cross again soon.